Well, today I want to talk a little bit about what I call connective tissue, which is really basically the really important component of playing, especially acoustic guitar, that I use, which is basically, how do you get from one chord to the next, and how do you fill in between? And those are I call them vocabulary licks, which I'm going to show you some today. But I've been looking at kind of experimenting with something really simple, especially for beginners, doing a G chord to an E minor chord, because most people can handle those chords pretty well, and they're pretty comfortable with them. I wanted to give you a little alternate voicing for that today and show you what can be done with that. So what I want to talk about today is, most people know, I think a bar chord, G. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that today, but I'm doing it in a little bit different way. I'm going to do what I call a partial, which is basically playing the last four strings like that. I'm really concentrating on those four strings, because a lot of times with guitar playing, especially if you're playing with other people, we end up not playing full cowboy chords. Get any kind of bass instrument in there, piano or left-hand piano, whatever. So I think it's important to basically say, okay, here's a voicing that is a regular G bar chord, but I'm only accenting the last four. Now what I am doing though is I'm coming over with my thumb. This might not work for everybody. I do this a lot. So I get the thumb over here on the third fret of the low E string. And so what I'm going to do, instead of going down to this low E minor, which we know, pretty common, right? E minor seventh. I'm going to do something a little bit different, and it's a really easy move no matter where you're at. Is taking that G chord, and then I'm going to open up this low E string from the G note, and then I'm going to open it up to an open E note. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pinky and put it on the fifth fret of the E string, and it sounds like this. Now, that may not sound like an E minor to you, but it's the same notes that are contained in the E minor chord, but it sounds a little bit different voiced up here. It's almost like jazzy sounding, maybe a little bit, but it's a cool inversion. So the reason I think it's great for what we're talking about is you can go from this G, and all you got to do is put your pinky on the fifth fret of the B string, and then just play those three strings there. The D, the G, and the B string. You don't have to worry about that high E for now. So watch what happens when I start out with a G chord, when I'm just thumbing over the top, and then I open it up. Different sound, isn't it? As opposed to, that's fine too. But you can, by utilizing that fifth fret on that B string, it almost looks like a G6, but it can be used as a minor when you use the low E note, relative minor to G, right? And again, this chord sequence has been used a million times, like Paul Simon's Slip Sliding Away and old rock and roll tunes and all kinds of stuff. So what I'm going to do though, I'm going to take it a little bit further today since we have some time. And so what I'm saying is, if you take that G chord, that essentially it's a G bar, but we're really emphasizing those top high four strings, and we're then going to put our thumb over the top. Now if you can do this, cool. If you can't, don't worry, just stick with your regular G, and because there's going to be stuff for you too in there when I get into the vocabulary licks. But so I'm just doing a real simple rhythm. What I did there is I went from, so I did this inversion, this voicing, and then I backed it off and I did the regular E minor. So already I've increased my vocabulary of what I can do with this. Kind of a nice sound, isn't it? And these are all just little tricks that you can utilize in any key, and I'll show you how that's done in a minute. But so if we're doing this, what what are we going to fill in with? Well, there's lots of things we can do, but I'm going to show you a little lick that we do in more of an R&B setting quite often. It happens in country too. It's called a fourth. So a fourth is what a fourth sounds like, you know, 1/4. In this case, it's a D and a G note. So if a D is here, the 4 chord is G. Probably know that by now. But this one has a particular sound to it, and I'm going to apply it here, and then you can add it to your arsenal of you know, vocabulary licks that you can use as connective tissue to go from a G to an E minor, and actually any chord from a 1 to a 6 minor. It could be A, you know, it could be B. It applies, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. But of course, because of the magic G chord has so many open strings, you know, when you do it that way, it's a particularly easy one, which is why I picked it for this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide from the 3rd to the 5th fret on that 4th lick, you know, that you've probably heard that with Al Green and Curtis Mayfield, that kind of, or, and you'll hear it, when I do it in practice, you'll hear the vibe of it. It's kind of R&B-ish. So if I'm doing this, right, sorry, and then down to, you can use this. So you just go from that 3rd to the 5th on 2 strings, a double stop really. And all you're doing is hitting the 4ths, which is, and you're sliding it. So what does that sound like within the context of the progression? It sounds like this. Yeah. Kind of expressive. All right, so now you've got some places to go. I think I've covered some other licks in my previous lesson where I was doing a... And if you don't know that one, I'll just quickly show it to you, but I'm just sliding up on the G string to the 4th fret from the 2nd fret. And then I'm pinching that high E string with it. And pulling off, open it up, to G, land on your chord. And then you got to pick up that E note, which is the 2nd fret on the D string. So here's what it sounds like in slow motion. That kind of wraps it up, that kind of finalizes it. So now what I want to do is play both those licks together. And that way, my goal here is to give you guys some tools, some vocabulary tools that you can use within the context of going from one chord to the next. And you know, eventually you'll get comfortable with it and you'll start slipping and sliding. There's Paul Simon again. Sliding around and we'll get to all those at some point. But I wanted to keep it simple for today and just say what I'm really giving you here is an alternative voicing for the G to the E minor. Now I'm going to go up to that half bar thing. And another nice thing about that is you can wiggle it. And then when you add the yeah, I know you've heard that before, but so I did that. Now you got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So that one was just utilizing the open D string and bouncing off the 2nd fret. Open G, 2nd fret D, and then open D. But you got to syncopate it. So you see how you fill in all those things, and it's okay that every you can fill in stuff and not worry about if it seems a little stark. You know, like if it's okay. It doesn't have to always be ringing out. I mean, of course, the beauty of the G chord is you can get those open strings ringing. I really like the sound of that. Feel free to go back to that G anytime. I think the point of this exercise maybe is to alternate between the different voicings. That's what I do. You know, sometimes I'll go, you know, whatever. But that's for another day. Really, these things are endless, and like I said, you can use it in any key. A, F sharp minor. Now you're in a different key, but you're still doing the same. But we'll get the knack of that as we travel on this journey of connective tissue and how it works going from chord to chord. Hope you enjoyed that. See you down the road.